Hello everyone. Okay, right. Getting started. Right, okay, hello. Welcome to this weekend's Sunday series. I was supposed to be doing a get to know me video, so I'm really sorry that that didn't happen, because I put on Snapchat that I was going to do it and then people were like, do it tomorrow, but plans have changed. I trained with Byron today, who is here with me. Hello. And because he's here, I wanted to take advantage of his expertise. So to fill you guys in, and I just did a post on my Instagram about this, but about 2 years ago when I first started training, I kind of came to a plateau with my training where I felt like I wasn't really progressing. I felt as though, you know, I was kind of becoming a bit disinterested with my training, and I really wanted to go back to the drawing board and properly learn, you know, the basics of training and kind of find my love for strength training, which is what I first fell in love with. And that's totally normal, and I have a lot of clients who now come to me and say, you know, they really struggle with, you know, they've been training for a certain period of time, they've been getting into the flow of it, but then they suddenly come to this place where they then sort of plateau with their training, whether that be with their goals, physically, or just mentally they lose interest in it, or they're not seeing any physical change. So it's my job to today kind of cover a few topics so that I can help you guys out as much as possible with this kind of issue, and I hope that you find it helpful. So Byron is a super accomplished trainer. You've been PTing for how long?
5 years.
5 years. And he was the first person that sort of really helped me learn how to actually lift and not just do kind of like what I thought was like just strength training. So I'll never forget the first time that we trained together, and he was like, your squat is horrendous. Like, he came up to me in the gym and was like, your squat is not good, like we need to discuss this, and basically completely re-taught me how to lift. And I'm not trying to like blow my own trumpet, but I like to pride myself on having like excellent form now, and I always make sure in all of my videos and everything, you know, my form is something that I'm so hot to maintain and to keep being really solid, because that's the foundation of, you know, my training, the fact that I started at the basics and I got really good foundations to then build upon. So thanks to Byron, that is why I am here today. So I'm going to get you to get the questions up, and we're going to get started. So the topic is, for those of you that are just joining us, reaching plateaus in your exercise in your training. So the first question that I am pitching to Byron is, what is the main reason why you feel people come to a plateau with their training?
So people generally tend to get bored or just keep doing the same thing over and over again, and where you're not changing anything, your body just adapts and you're not really progressing anywhere.
Yeah. So the body basically, for those of you that don't know, so there's a thing called like newbie gains, which a lot of people see, and which I definitely had. So when you first start training, it's a completely new stimulus for the body. So you suddenly, you can notice changes quite quickly early on. Yeah,
the first 6 months you make a lot of progress.
Yeah.
Anything's new, you just don't change straight away.
Exactly.
And then if you don't ever do anything new, you're never getting more progress.
Yeah.
So it's still
Exactly. So like the first 6 months is easy to see kind of those kind of changes in physique, but then once you kind of reach that 6 month period where you've been strength training for a while, you've kind of been doing the same thing for a bit, you then notice that the kind of changes can slow down, and eventually you will plateau if you don't kind of instigate new stimuluses and kind of incorporate
even a slight variation.
Exactly, just try and incorporate some variation into your training. So that's the main reason. So as Byron said, you know, you lose interest for one, because you might be doing the same thing week in, week out, and you know, for the first couple of months you're like, yeah, this is awesome, like I'm really enjoying it. And that's the way it is, you know, you really enjoy strength training, and if you've gone from being like me, for example, I was an absolute cardio bunny, you know, running on the treadmill and you're just staring at a blank wall. Suddenly you come into this environment where your training is incredibly varied, you're lifting weights, you're doing different things, you know, there's a leg day and an upper body day and all of this. That's really cool, but it does soon kind of, without any variation or kind of change up, it can become quite repetitive after a while, as with any form of anything. You know, if you do something day in, day out, or, you know, 5 times a week, 3 times a week, or whatever, you can lose interest in it. So it's about creating a variation and intensity.
Yeah. If you feel good, then you just feel like you want to keep doing it forever.
Precisely.
And it works at first.
You're going to have to keep doing this, by the way. Sorry about this, he's got his phone locked.
Technical issue.
Okay, so second question. As a PT, what are the first things, so someone's come to you and they've reached a plateau with their training, what are the first things that you would then instigate to kind of take them out of that plateau?
Give them a new challenge. Give them something they haven't done before, so it's new to them. It's probably going to be hard, but most people like that. They'll rise to it and they'll try and really make themselves better at it and really work on it. If you don't ever do something that's new or different from what you're doing now, you're never going to get better. So your skills won't improve, your body won't develop as well because you're not challenging the body. It always adapts very quickly. Once you get used to something, especially if you get good at it, you'll adapt very quickly. So even a slight variation, like in a pull-up, changing your hand position, so rather than doing pronated, semi-supinated, so palms facing, or supinated palms facing you, even a slight variation like that can really change it, like the muscles you're using, and how it affects you, how good you are at the exercise. And you haven't got to do it too often either, like every sort of 6 weeks or so, just a slight change can make a big difference.
Okay. Would you say, for example, so we're going to take so someone's come to you and they've been squatting 40 kg for the last, 8 weeks, and no, even longer than that, maybe 4 months, 5 months, and they just can't kind of breach that threshold of 40 kg, and every time they do that, either they're nervous about it and they just don't want to add that extra weight. How would you go about kind of tackling that issue?
So you could work on loads of things like eccentric, so really slow on the way down, just to work on strengthening the position, make sure position is really, really good.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, so just explain what the eccentric phase is.
So eccentric is the lowering phase, so on the squat it's on the way down. The concentric means on the way up, so the lifting phase. So eccentric generally you're always stronger, so it's easier to go slower. Whereas concentric, the lifting phase, is harder, so you have
because you're having to work against gravity basically. So going down is easier. So if you can slow it down, so do something like time under tension, for example. So count in your head. I remember that one of the first things that I did with Byron was for him to slow down my squat completely, and I was having to do 5 seconds down, and I even found that I was like, oh my god, I just want to squat. But so slowing it right down, improve that kind of ability to hold the weight under tension, and then maybe progress after that.
Stay in control as well. If you go slow on the way down, you can generally stay in control, make sure you're in good position, allows you to eventually lift more weight because you understand the movement rather than just rushing it all the time.
I was going to say, the best thing about slowing down any strength training exercise is highlighting those kind of imbalances or the errors that you're doing within the movement. So for example, with a lot of my clients, and I'm sure you do the same, when they come to me, you say, a lot of people come to me and they're quite well trained already, so they've said, yeah, I can squat. Okay, let's do just with the barbell, let's show me a squat, and they will just rush through it, like they just want to go bam, 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 and it's like, okay, let's slow it down, let's look at what's going on, where are your knees going, where are your feet going, where's your body going, and if you actually do that and you slow it down, sometimes you can really highlight kind of areas that really need to be worked on. So sometimes that's one of the best things that you can do.
If it's so fast, you almost can't see it sometimes.
Exactly.
It might look good if you're lifting a lot of weight, but if you slow it down, you see the problems. And that's why if you fix that long term, much more progression is there. Okay,
so just going back to the point that we said, so someone's come to you and they've been squatting 40 kg for X amount of time. So the first thing you want to do is get them to slow down the eccentric phase and work on kind of building stability within that movement and getting really, really comfortable with that kind of pattern of movement. Other things that you would do, is there any accessory work that you would then incorporate into their training to reinforce their confidence to go heavier, or kind of?
Yeah, you can change the variation, so you could do like a front squat, which is going to challenge the upper back more and more load on the quads. So still going to get stronger in that position, but you're working on more upright torso.
Yeah.
So your posture will improve a lot, and just generally you're still working the same movement as squat, but you're slightly more upright, and just slightly different muscles under stress. Generally your posture improves a lot though. After doing front squats, tends to really, really improve your back squat.
Yeah.
Because you're able to hold a much more upright torso.
Yeah, I definitely.
Able to get a bit deeper as well, generally.
And there was a time when I had a hip flexor injury, and I couldn't back squat, and I came to Byron and I was like, I don't know what to do. I can't squat, it's hurting me. What can I do? And he said, try a front squat. And so I tried front squats, and that was fine. That didn't cause any aggravation within my hip flexor. Did front squats for about 6 weeks, no back squat at all, nothing, just front squats, and maybe only that once a week. Went back to do my back squats when I'd taken that break and rested my injury, and I went up. My improvement was astronomical, and I enjoyed the pattern of movement. I felt more confident in it. So it's sometimes about changing the pattern of movement, trying a variation of it that might kind of help you to then build strength in the original movement. So it's definitely something to think about. Exactly, right. Sorry. Third question. Sorry. How would you define a plateau? So I know that a lot of you are probably sitting there thinking, what actually is a plateau? What is she on about? No, shut up. What is she on about? What am I on about? What is a plateau, and how do you define whether you've reached one within your training?
So plateau is basically you're no longer progressing. So if you're doing the same weight for 6 months or whatever, you're not lifting any more weight, any more reps, exact same exercise, same tempo, same progression. Like for a push-up, for example, if you can't quite do it on the floor, you do it on a raised box, and you're still doing the same thing, same amount of reps, same volume. There's no progression. Your body won't change. You look the same. If your training hasn't progressed, your body generally won't change. Even if your diet's good, still your won't change. So you have to have some sort of improvement. Even just doing one more rep, the next week, that still makes a difference. There's still progression.
So there's something that we talk about as a PT that you always want to be aware of, and that's just looking at someone's total volume. So if you're training, for example, I know you'll probably be better at explaining this, but we always want something called total volume to be going up week on week to create physical change, to instigate improvement, and to create kind of that progression of within your training. So do you want to explain what total volume kind of equates to, and how you would then gauge whether yours is going up or not?
So for example, if you're doing 5 by 5, that's 25 reps total. If you do 3 by 10, that's 30 reps total. So although they're quite different rep ranges, doing 3 by 10 is obviously more volume, but you could still do 7 by 5, that would be 30 reps, still the same amount of volume, but with less reps, obviously you lifted more weight, so technically total load is actually higher. So in terms of stress on your body, it's going to be much higher. So you can do it so many different ways with reps, like we've done the on the minute thing a lot of the time, so it works on total volume. So for example, on the minute basically is, you start the minute, you've got 60 seconds to do X amount of reps. So let's say pull-ups, we do quite a lot on. So let's say you're going to do 3 pull-ups on the minute. So clock starts, 60 seconds, you're going to do 3 pull-ups. If you do it in 10 seconds, you've got 50 seconds rest. The next minute starts, you do the same again. If you do it for 10 minutes, that's 30 reps total. So if you were to then do 4 reps, for example, that's going to be 40 reps total. So that's a big change in volume just by doing 1 more rep per minute. It seems like, wow, 3 pull-ups. If you're good at pull-ups, you can do it assisted as well. If you're good at pull-ups, you might think that's easy, but try it. It's pretty hard.
And even if you do that with a resistance band, if that helps you,
loads of variations.
There's so many variations you can use, but it just allows you to increase that total volume, which is what we want to be going up. So touching on what Byron just said, changing rep ranges, so increasing from, say you're doing 3 by 10, maybe increase the load and decrease the rep range so that you can increase total volume. That would be a way of definitely progressing your training. So we described a plateau as just basically not progressing or reaching a period in your training where you aren't seeing any progress. Thank you. So you're not seeing any progress. So you're not able to do any more reps. You're not able to do. You're not able to kind of go from maybe the 10 kgs and you've been chest pressing them for months and you can't quite make that jump to the 12 kg dumbbells. That's what we mean by a plateau. Okay. Question 4, and this is something that I think a lot of people don't know about, and it's a really, really important thing to understand when it comes to undergoing a strength training kind of phase or training program. It's something called periodization, periodization of training, and you, Byron, are going to explain what is periodization and why should we all know what it is and basically implement it into our training. So I will hand over to you.
So periodization is
Speak up.
Periodization, very shy, is basically where you're planning your cycles of training throughout the year to make you perform optimally. So essentially you could do anything from endurance to strength to speed to just cardiovascular endurance as well as muscular endurance, to make sure that you can be more well-rounded. So you work on your weaknesses. So for example, if you're really good at endurance, great at high reps, but you're limited on strength, you're going to have a problem somewhere down the line where you don't progress because you're limited by your weakest link. So you're only really ever as strong as your weakest link. So if you never train that aspect, you're never going to improve as a well-rounded athlete, or regardless of what your goal is, even if your goal is just fat loss, you can still work on other goals and still improve on other areas.
Yeah.
So you've got a different goal each time, rather than always focusing on the mirror. If you work on performance in training, you can improve in those factors.
But also with periodization, I think, you know, the kind of definition of periodization is you look at the year as like a big chunk of the year. So this is the kind of the overarching year, and within that you have smaller cycles of your training, whereby you can have different goals within the year. So for example, for maybe you break it down into 3-month blocks, for example, or you know, smaller chunks, and within that you need to have a kind of an increase in intensity, and then you need to have something like a deload week, for example, where you taper your training back so that you can rest the body. You know, we can't train year round like Olympic athletes. It's just not possible, and your body is not going to your body's not going to withstand that sort of training. So we have to understand, how can we increase and decrease our training in increments over the year period in order to get the most out of our training. So there's things like taper week, for example. I know that's something that the London Muscle Guide have in their guides, for example, is having that deloading week or deloading phase within your training, where you kind of really scale back the weight. You just go high rep but really low weight, I think, is something that a lot of people do.
So it allows recovery, but if you do a strength phase and endurance phase, that could be a deload as well, technically, because the load can be dramatically reduced. Yeah. Even though the volume of reps is going up, the load is much lighter, so that's going to allow your body to recover much, much faster. Obviously, it'll tax you in a different way, but allows a bit of heavy loading to be reduced, allow your joints and muscles to recover faster, so that's going to really help in that sense.
Okay. So basically, periodization, if you have a plateau in your training, maybe look at it and try and create different phases in your training. So like you just said, have a strength phase where you kind of reduce the rep range, increase the weight, and then you have a phase, so you could do that for 3 months, for example, and you have X, Y, and Z goals. So within this 3 months, I want to be able to squat X amount of weight, I want to be able to deadlift X amount of weight, and that would be your strength phase. Coming out of that, you could then have more of an endurance phase where you're looking at more muscular endurance and cardiovascular endurance as well. Both could be worked on. But within that phase, you would go higher rep range, decrease the weight, and kind of work on a different goal or different goals within that kind of period. So that would help you to create variation in your training. Not only that, but also differences in intensity. So they're both going to be intense, but in their own different ways, and that's going to help you to keep it interesting, to keep you engaged in your training, which is what we want more than anything. We want to maintain a year-round kind of healthy, happy training schedule. And you know, if you're constantly hammering at getting that X amount of squat, or you're constantly hammering for the deadlift, you know, your body's going to become accustomed to, you know, a repetitive movement at X amount of weight and maybe not progress. But also, you know, you might find having a strength phase, leaving that to one side, going into an endurance phase, then coming back full circle around to the strength phase, a completely different approach, and maybe might be stronger. You know, you never know. But the body's an incredible machine, and it will adapt. And shut up. And it is, and it will adapt, and it will, and you know, you will see change. And it's probably good to, you know, kind of incorporate something like that, so that you're not constantly focused on that one goal year round, because, like we said, this is what we're talking about. You will eventually plateau.
Cool. Even with the cycles, though, if you're doing like a 4 to 6 week cycle, that can still make a lot of progress. Yeah. So if you're more advanced, people tend to progress a lot quicker and adapt a lot quicker. So you might need to change it more regularly.
Shorter, in shorter cycles.
If you're not as advanced, more of a beginner, generally it favours you more to do a slightly longer cycle, because you might take time to learn certain movements or learn techniques or adapt to it. Whereas when you're more advanced, people tend to progress really quickly because they know exactly what to do. They feel like they need change more regularly, so that's an important point to note as well.
Byron, question. So I know where I go for all my kind of exercise inspiration and motivation, and there are general like exercise gurus that I like to turn to for help. We were just sitting looking at, I'm going to get my book out because I'm obsessed with it. So this is one of like my Bibles that I've been studying for the last couple of weeks, which is Becoming a Supple Leopard by Dr. Kelly Starrett. So this is one place that I go for information, you know, about training and how, like, so many times I get asked, where do you go for your information about training? Like, what do you read? What do you know, where do you get your kind of inspiration and motivation? And 9 times out of 10, I do, you know, I use social media a lot. There's a lot of really good people I like. Brett Contreras, he's a really good guy. I'm trying to think of other people now off the top of my head. Who else do we like?
Charles Poliquin.
Charles Poliquin, yes. I was speaking about him yesterday, actually. So basically, I'm asking you, who do you turn to for, you know, your kind of exercise, inspiration and motivation?
In terms of like mobility and stretching and flexibility, I would have to say Kelly Starrett. I've followed him for almost 10 years now.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's just unbelievable what he does, and it really makes a lot of sense what he does. So in terms of like stretching and just general lifestyle, how to apply stretching and mobility and how important it is, that aspect of it, he's great at that. So I definitely recommend his stuff. He has like a YouTube channel as well.
So look at Kelly Starrett on YouTube. I'm going to put a link to that on I'll take a picture of it and put it on my Snapchat, so take a look. In
terms of like strength training, I'd say Charles Poliquin is arguably one of the best conditioning coaches and strength coaches in the world. Yeah. Been around for a long time, coached a lot of athletes, got a lot of great results, great testimonials. So go on Charles Poliquin's website, just Google Charles Poliquin.
Charles Poliquin. I'll put that on my Snapchat as well.
And also UKCA have some great...
so that's the UK Strength and Conditioning Association.
Some great links and... and articles on strength training, periodization, generally, even nutrition.
They've got really good articles on their website, so definitely go and just Google the UK Strength and Conditioning Association. There's a lot of really good information on there.
Yeah, it's always updated as well, so you can subscribe to the website and get a membership, and they'll send you out constant articles and the latest information about performance, recovery, nutrition. Also, John Berardi, yeah, great nutrition. Good. I think he's one of the best about coaching, just because nutrition is not just about what you have to eat, but with clients, it's how you coach someone how to eat, about changing their habits, not just, you know, have a diet, but change your lifestyle and change your habits. That's what really counts. Yeah. If you don't change your habits, you're never going to get there long term.
Yeah, exactly. Cool, good. So, final question, and this is a bit of a curveball, but yeah. So I want to know from Byron, what are the biggest mistakes or biggest bugbears that you see people doing within their training as a PT in the gym environment? What's your biggest bugbears?
Really annoying thing for me, because I'm very picky about technique, is learning to walk the week and run, basically. If you can't do the basics, don't try something that's too hard for you.
Please take a moment, that phrase, put it in quotation marks and keep that. The amount of times that you see people running before they can walk with their training is exceptional. And the amount of time I get people come to me and say, I can do this, this and this, and then you kind of get them to do a very, very basic move and they can barely do that. You know, it's so important to get the foundations and solid foundations to then build upon with your training.
Yeah, so if you can't do the basics, you're going to hurt yourself, you know, your body's not really ready for it. So it's really important to make sure you can do the basics and really take the time to learn technique. It is quite frustrating because it seems like you're not really getting anywhere, because you want to get there in 5 minutes, you want to have an amazing body tomorrow. But if you don't know the basics, you won't really understand, and it's going to be so hard to relearn down the line. So if you learn something incorrectly the first time, it's very hard to relearn. If you do it wrong for 10 years, it's like if you try to take your driving test again. It'll be so hard to do it again.
Because exactly.
Yeah, because you drive your own way now.
Especially if you're me. Okay, so that's the main thing. So form. So people basically going too far with their kind of basically running before they can walk. So cool. Okay. Thank you so much to Byron for coming on and chatting with me. I hope you found this beneficial. It was a bit of a kind of spur of the moment one, but we've definitely tried to cover as much as possible within the time frame. If you have any questions, I'll be on my phone for the next kind of hour or so please drop them below and I will try and get back to as many of them as possible. And yeah, I hope you found this beneficial. I hope this can help you progress or move forward from any training plateaus that you might have come to. And I will see you next week for another Sunday series where I'll be back with Rhiannon for Why Are You Not Achieving Your Goals? So stay tuned for that one and have a very, very happy Sunday. Bye.